Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
This is Seeking Me Production, bring you another TV review.
Now, we're no strangers to Stephen King. In fact, we probably watched so many adaptations of his work and read quite a few of them too to understand just how important Stephen King's particular touches is in Hollywood. And
yeah, we really, on our channel we have our own Stephen King tribute.
Very much so. Check that out.
Yeah, and I would say that among his adaptations, he makes up at least like an eighth or a tenth of what Hollywood produces.
And he keeps going.
Mm-hmm. But there are some particular stories that will be regularly adapted.
But of course, it all circles around probably one of his best, if not well-known properties. That being, of course, It.
Now, we have our review for both chapters 1 and 2 of the 2017 and 2019 films directed by Andy Muschietti.
And of course, we've watched the miniseries that took place before them.
Yeah, back in the 1990s, the one that starred Tim Curry in the role of It or Pennywise. And we've just watched those reviews. The first part was more favorable.
Pretty much a unanimous vote whenever you talk to anyone about this particular story.
But like the second half of the book itself, when it deals with the adults and that English version actually is the weakest part.
It's it's the weakest one, and it's really not the one that's looked on as favorably. And it always revolves around that whole concept of how Stephen King could write a really well story, but doesn't really know how to end it.
In this review that we're discussing, Welcome to Derry, in this where it is to lay the groundwork of letting Andy Muschietti and his team to retackle the source material in a more expressive light.
Now, when Andy Muschietti really did helm those two parts, chapter 1 and chapter 2, we got a pretty good idea, at least, on how he was really going to handle the themes and the concepts of what Stephen King was trying to bring to the audiences.
And a mere fact that one of the goals was to be more faithful to what the 1990s TV series was allowed to do.
In quite a few ways, he truly is more faithful.
But he did have some more liberties taken. But here's the thing. The novel is almost around 1,000 pages long. So
that's so much material that you go ahead to skim through just to see what works and what doesn't. And we all know there's certain parts of that book that no one really wants to touch.
The more important to understand Welcome to Derry, the TV show, at least for so far only one season of television.
It really circles around more of the beginnings of its reign of terror in Derry, and how does that particularly reverberates throughout the concept of it in the novel or in the story in general.
Yes. Now, in Andy Muschietti's two films, they did discuss some of the earlier incidents that took place in the world in the history of Derry.
The Ironworks massacre or a situation that took place.
The Bradley Murders gang.
And of course the Black Spot burning.
Only discussed in the films, but in this, at least so far, first season, explored the Black Spot. Now, mind you, the films, one of the biggest changes they did was they shifted the timeline of the story. In the novels in the 1990s TV series, it took place in the 50s for when they were doing the children storyline.
But in the movies, they decided to shift it towards the 80s,
so they can do a more modern timeline. And when they did the adults storyline.
Now, with that particular shift, there is a form of unique, attributes that has to take place whenever we look at what the original novel and the adaptations that really tackled. But within the concept of the show, we really specify on one of the major incidences that evolved around it, or Pennywise, or whatever you really want to call this particular entity, with his interactions with Derry and its citizens.
And in the first, in Welcome to Derry, this initial, with their hopes to do 3 seasons that actually tackles each of those previous events, this one mainly anchored itself on the black spot that takes place in 1962. And what we have here is, for the most part, is more original to the show, while still being grounded in the continuity of what the films laid out when they were able to do it, but also expand on what was done in the films as well.
They do a lot of interesting things with this particular show. Some stuff that I didn't even feel as though, at least from my initial viewing, didn't think was even possible.
Now, we want to first address that, yes, Indy Muschietti and his sister, who were the creative force from the films. The showrunners of the actual show are actually Jason Fuchs and Brad Caleb Kane. They're the showrunners who was the ones who maintained a consistent focus. And Muschietti is still on board as a main creative force, as he directs basically most of the episodes that books and most of the episodes of this series, the season of television. And I would say from what they were able to do is address the scope a lot more better in what the films were able to do. And also be much more, because it's television and a lot more and more long form story format, suggestive themes, as well as at times a lot more violent than what the films were able to do.
This show does not pull punches when it comes to child murder and other really horrific things. The racist aspects that deals within Derry and the heart within this particular time period, and various other horrific things that was going on.
And it's because that they're focusing this season on the black spot, and it brings in a lot more highlighted representation on the black community. It makes for this to be done through HBO. In a way, this is like the unofficial trilogy of sorts of what HBO have done on producing high quality television through the multi-genre space through the black perspective.
Again, this is right up there with Lovecraft Country.
And before that, HBO was Watchmen.
This is really top tier television stuff that sits right comfortably with that audience and that grouping, as well as Game of Thrones, in my opinion.
And even though it's uses the expanding the source material from the It novels, the show actually takes its time, takes the opportunity, like the nature of Stephen King's novels, to actually expand even further beyond the novel and do a lot more world building in the King's universe overall.
So if you're going in this thinking that you're going to be seeing Pennywise throughout all this particular show, don't get it twisted. You're going to get Pennywise in all his horrific glory, but it's going to lead you there.
And it is now to discuss a little bit more on the characters, because this is where a lot more of the expansiveness comes to play. But let's discuss about Pennywise, or It, played by Bill Skarsgård.
Now, when Bill Skarsgård first was in the reins of dealing with It/Pennywise, especially when you look at it from the 2 films they did prior, I felt he did a wonderful job. I definitely felt as though he brought his own unique flair to the character himself. But I also felt that his version of Pennywise was more animalistic, and in a sense, more driven just by the concept of his hunger and satiating what he needs in order to continue to exist. But in the confines of this show, I feel as though this has truly allowed Bill Skarsgård to truly do his own unique take and go even harder on it. I feel as though this is when I really got to understand and see
the character
fully come to to the front in line.
And it's not just how the show explores even more of its origins, because a lot of what the show does, it reiterates the origins of it that was pulled from the novel and that was done on it chapter 2.
Now, again, the character of it, the creature itself, is not confined within the boundaries of one form. This is a shapeshifter, a glamour in certain sense, an individual that doesn't just has one form. This is a creature that constantly reinvents itself, and it definitely takes pride in that concept as well, especially when you look at it through the gaze of what Bill Skarsgård does with the character.
And the Bill Skarsgård's character of it and of the whole crew, they have imagined the other newer forms that it takes on that's even much more intimate in these horrors and the fears of what was conscious of the times in the 1960s.
And even beyond that.
And the best thing that this series did is really express just how much of Derry it has influence on. Now, when we talk about the how this series is not just expanding upon the It novel, it actually also expands upon the world of Stephen King, mainly anchored through the performance and character of Dick Hallorann by Chris Chalk.
Absolutely love this actor and definitely love them in this role. Now, for those of you who probably don't understand where Dick Hallorann fits into this whole narrative, is a character that was brought over from The Shining and also other books like Dr. Sleep. And by the way, if you haven't got a chance, please watch Dr. Sleep the movie and watch The Shining. Wonderful adaptations, and I definitely feel as though if you want to truly understand the grasp of what this character brings towards this particular narrative and who they are as a person, watch them.
Now, Chris Chalk, I liked him when HBO did their own version of Perry Mason, where he played a character on that role.
Such a good show, such a good actor. Oh my god.
So, yeah, that was one by Matthew Raines as a title character. And he was basically like a second lead in a way, so it's thankful that HBO remembered him, that actor, and
give him some more work.
And based off the work that he's done to really explore a very multifaceted version of Dick Hallorann, I really want for them, if anything comes out of this series,
give him his spin-off. I'm okay with watching him going through his earlier years in the Overlook Hotel and dealing with all the nonsense and shenanigans that place has to offer. Because, my God.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not like he's a character that they decided to add into the story. No, it was addressed in the novel
really
during
was.
the incident of the Black Spot, and the significance is mainly geared towards the known King's concept of The Shining.
Now, for those, again, deep dives here, The Shining is basically King's answer towards the psychic abilities that develop between individuals like ESP and psychic, impressions that individuals are able to pick up on. Now, Dick inherited this from his grandmother, who was also a Shiner just like him. And of course, if you watch The Shining or read the books, you know that he deals with another individual named Danny who has similar abilities. But in this particular show, in this particular story, this evolves around him being in his earlier years as a Army officer or soldier, and he's recruited for his unique special ability to be able to track things.
And how they explore his abilities is it is one of the most visually stunning things to be on this show, and we'll discuss more on how they handle that stuff in the production side of things. But that military angle is also expressed with the introduction or the reintroduction of the Hamlins.
Ah, yes. Derry's little slice of the African-American experience.
Now, the Hamlins, if you remember from the movies or the novels, a character of Mike Hamlin who is the token black character in in that story, who wasn't really explored much until the second part. But the significance of Mike's, the reason, like the whole story, this series is based off of Mike's research of history's Derry. And the Hanlons, when we take this, the show kicks off, really kicks off when they arrive at Derry, mainly through Leroy Hanlon, who is the Air Force officer.
And the patriarch of the Hanlon family. Now, the unique concept of Leroy's point in this story deals with the concept that because of an earlier mission and accident, it altered his brain chemistry to the point that he's no longer able to really feel or experience the concepts of fear. But of course, in a town like Derry and dealing with the particular enemies that deals within it, he finds his own unique avenues around this particular concept.
And his wife Charlotte and his child Will Hanlon. This show decides really focus. They're the main Central American family that we focus on, and what we see is the really tumultuous relationships between these central figures of non-communication, how that affects the fears that reverberates within 1960s periods of racism. And
not only just the Hanlons is dealing with the situations that in Derry through the racism of that town, is also Ronnie and her father. That whole situation of how it goes after her is something that is brilliant, but also traumatizing to see
in many ways. But for the character of Will Hanlon, who in the timeline is the father of Mike, and let's just say, like, the way the show decides where this show ends without spoiling, it may have tinkered with certain timelines, but but without necessarily breaking it as well, to the point that it leaves it more open-ended if you know the fate of Will Hanlon.
Now, talk about fate, we got to talk about the other cast members and where they line up on here as well.
Particularly most of the other children characters. The main, I would say, besides Will, the main other child character in this story, Welcome to Derry, is the character of Lily, who gets majority of the brunt of it. Tyranny.
This girl goes through the ringer. Like, anything that could go wrong has gone wrong in this little girl's life, and this actress has done a phenomenal job being able to help us understand the true terrors of not only dealing with the concepts of puberty and dealing with the average everyday problems that we all go through and developing to becoming the type of individuals we want to be, but also the unique avenues that deals with psycho issues, dealing with mental illness and the losses of family members
or friends.
Any grown adult would have just thrown in the towel and just gave it all up. And then the storylines that deals with her with another unique avenue in the Stephen King mythos, that being the area known as Juniper Hill.
I would say that it really spins the theories with when we start showing. Going through Lily's storyline.
Oh yeah.
And the other character, like the It Chapter 1 movie, and how they were able to really have all these fantastic child actors to express these characters, I see very bright futures ahead of them. Particularly the characters of Marge and Rich.
Oh my God, Rich's character was such a delight.
A lot of story twists and
so many
revelations deals with those.
You won't believe where they take certain characters in certain storylines.
And also another character that's worth discussing is the character of Rose, who is the main character through the perspective of the indigenous Native Americans side of the story, especially since how her tribe specifically is tied directly to its origins when he came to Earth.
Thankfully, that like some that the It films they probably had troubles with in terms of production. Rather it was not too big of a budget that they were dealing with. Welcome to Derry clearly was allowed to have whatever money they can throw at it.
Yeah, you see it all on screen. Now, it's not to say that there aren't wonky moments. There are certain episodes where the CGI and the usage of certain effects didn't necessarily go over as well as they possibly could have.
They're mainly in the first half of the series.
But when you get towards the second half, it's like completely, oh my God, they were doing this. Like I wish I had let Andy Muschietti and his sister, do what they wanted to do the first time around.
Yeah, it's like the way they decided to really focus on expanding its influence on the town.
Mm-hmm.
It really caused the question why they didn't do the real ending to the It novels at that point, because the show it starts off like a somewhat slow burn, but by the midway point it really expanded the real depths of the scope of where the It novel could reach. The story, speak of the scope, let's just say in the Andy Muschietti's adaptation, they do a really good job at handling Easter eggs or addressing elements that were in the novel that mainly through the concept of a turtle that keeps on popping up every chance they get.
They'll show you little snippets here and there about little trinkets and whatnot that helps you remind them, like, oh my God, whenever I'm looking at it, I also got to think about this turtle. But you never really get to see just where that's supposed to be. That concept is really supposed to go. But you do get a sense of how important it is, just not to the extent that I feel as though the show really could have took it. Mm-hmm. But be that as it may, when we look at what they do with Pennywise and what we do with The Shining and wow.
And it's just that the marketing and how the overall presentation catches you off guard.
And it's like it's all brought forth to you, especially when you look at it from the lens of that opening sequence. That intro for Welcome to Derry is chilling and probably one of the best intros in television that I've seen.
Yes,
wow.
They use a very old song like Smile and Ribbon,
yeah.
which very much captures that very old-timey tone that the old-timey tone they're going for.
But then they twist it on his head with all the horrible visual concepts that Derry is intertwined with.
Yes, it's very much a great representation on the overall feeling of watching this show. I'm really glad to say that this series of It, Welcome to Derry,
it's an amazing show.
One of the best television experiences in recent memory. It is very much on the same pedestal of where we talk about when HBO did Watchmen and Lovecraft Country.
And so just like hopefully unlike those shows, we get they
find a way to continue what they were able to do here. In a way, how they ended the show, it can be its own thing if this was just this one season of television.
But then it can also be the beginnings of something new and even more spectacular,
which will really be a great departure from the novel.
But we're here for it. If this is the level of craftsmanship that the directors, the writing team, and the actors are willing to bring to us, I'm here for that ride.
Mm-hmm. And also check out all our other outlets of media that we discussed, from Threads, Instagram, and also what was the other thing? Also
Letterboxd.
Yeah, Letterboxd.
Yep, there you go.
Threads, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And also like, share, subscribe if you want to continue on our journey here.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Adam.
And this has been CP Media Productions.
See you.